thank you. Yeah, first of all, I have too many slides, but I still want to I'm going to rush through it, but I still want to take the opportunity to thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to be here. Okay, so that was the title that you can still find on the abstract, but finally that's what there's one more person, André, who's going to talk also, and that's the title now, Working in Committee. And actually talking about committee, this is the committee of people who did the work, of 5 people. So it's about computational audio beat tracking. So that's about a machine that could perceive the beat as we do. And well, that's a solved problem. You could hear from some people. I mean, more than just a few people. It's commonly thought that, well, yeah, beat tracking, okay, that's done. I mean, maybe not this crowd, but it's actually used commonly as pre-processing for cover song detection, structure analysis, rhythm analysis, whatever and whatnot, as if it's working fine, just use it. And in fact, if you look at evaluation initiatives, you can really see that there's not much improvement since 2006 with an algorithm by Ansi Clapuri, which reached almost 80%. So if you trust that the current evaluation data sets are indeed representative of the beat problem that you can find out there in the world, well, you could think those remaining 20% that you still need to fill in, you could work on maybe have better evaluation metrics, work on annotation errors on the data used for evaluation, the problem of ambiguity in metrical level, these kind of things. But then, if you think, and maybe people in this room would rather fall in this category, that maybe evaluation data sets might not be so representative of the music of the world that's out there, well, then it's obvious that you need more data sets and challenging data sets. So you could take music, annotate it, but that's costly, that takes time. Or you could try to find automatically challenging example for beat trackers. So if you would have the ground truth, that would be straightforward. Yeah, you just look at those examples on which it doesn't work very well. But again, you need to annotate things to be sure of this. So the question here is, how could we possibly do that without having a ground truth? How could we identify difficult examples for computational beat tracking without having to go through annotating the beats, individual beats of the examples? So first idea is, maybe we can have a look at the mutual agreement or disagreement between a committee of different computational audio beat trackers, and think that, basically, the less beat trackers would agree, the more challenging this music piece would be. So that's the first idea. So if you look at, so that would be if you have the ground truth, so beats annotated on pieces of music, different, in this example, 3 beat trackers that produce beat sequences out of all these pieces of audio. You can compute a mean and average ground truth performance, right? That's if you have the annotations. If you don't have it, then that's the basic idea. Just look at the mutual agreement between all of those 3 beat trackers, and compute the mean of this agreement. That would be the mean mutual agreement, MMA. You're going to see MMA all over the place in the following slides. That's what it means. For example, here, that's a plotting of the MMA, the agreement between the beat trackers there on the y-axis, plotted against the mean ground truth performance. 5 beat trackers, above 1,000 beat annotated audio files. So different regions of this space are, low agreement and low average performance, high agreement, low average performance, etc., etc. And we can see that there's a pretty clear correlation in this. Yeah? That's entropy, that's in bits, actually. Yeah. So we can see some that's this particular performance metrics that we used. We could talk about that later maybe. Okay, so some examples of where the committee of bit trackers work, agree very much. Let's hear this. So that's one example. You can see, well, that's the beats that they produce. Let's just hear it.
What I'm gonna do with Erica Badu, I'm gonna have some
clicks.
fun. What do?
Well, yeah, there is on top of the audio, very short clicks on each and every single beat of each and every single beat tracker. So that's a lot of clicks going on, right?
You consider fun,
but they pretty clearly fall all on the same place, right? They agree. For this piece of music, they seem to agree. Then what happens when it's more messy, when they don't really agree very well? We just, short example, this one here.
Napoleon is weeping.
Can you hear it? Yeah.
Saloon. His invisible fiance's in the mirror, and the band is going home. It's raining hammers.
That's just a way to illustrate that indeed that's a difficult example, and they don't seem to agree. The previous one showed the complementary. So indeed, in our experiment, we saw that mean mutual agreement is indeed correlated with mean performance of good bit trackers. The 5 bit trackers we used were good bit trackers, state of the art. And so conclusion is that we can, without going through the process of, or before going through a costly process of annotating, construct new data sets that are difficult. And that's actually what we did, and there's this data set that's available with the audio, the annotations, some tags, some categorization of these files. So that's out there for other people to use if they want to. And that's just a proof of this idea. Usual data, things that are used commonly in computational bit tracking on the right. You see mean performance of different bit trackers, 60%, 16 different bit trackers. The average performance is 60%, and on our data it goes down to 22%. So this is just a proof of concept that indeed the data set that we set up with this method is more difficult than previous ones. Okay, so idea number 2 is that, okay, maybe what's challenging for bit tracker might not be the same as challenging for us, for our perception. And here's another experiment that we did, which is, so we can see on that, so that's human and that's machine, right? That's we had 5 people tapping spontaneously without the possibility to correct whatever they do, just tapping the beat spontaneously to the data I mentioned before, 200 files. So that's the mean mutual agreement between the tappings of those 5 people, and that's on the x-axis. That's the mean mutual agreement of bit trackers, computational bit trackers. So it's interesting here to see that there are places in this space where that are populated, and that show that there are some examples, of course, that are difficult to tap for humans as for machine, but some are relatively easy to tap for humans, but still very difficult for machines. So let's have a look at. So that's a categorization, the tags I was talking about just before, a categorization of the different these different pieces of music. There are so in this data set we can find pieces of music that are difficult for bit trackers because of tempo or timing related issues. For example, slow tempo or expressive timing, which is more it's pretty clear. Tempo discontinuity, these kind of things. Meter related, ternary meters, for example, or timbre related, relate a bit with the previous talk. For example, the lack of transient sounds or soft onsets. Pieces with soft onsets still seem to be very difficult to be tracked. Poor sound quality too. I don't know how timbre related that is, but other things. In terms of those that are difficult for machines and for humans, we can see that expressive timing, quiet accompaniment, changing time signatures are the most common categorizations. And the idea here is that, yeah, if it's even difficult for us to just to hear the beat, maybe that's not the type of files that we should focus on for our beat trackers first. Rather, focus on what's difficult apparently for machines, but not too much for us, right? If we hear something that we can't put in the machine, then that's a first step for future work. And these are the type of files that we found that seem to be okay for us, but difficult for machines. Ternary matter, slow tempo, soft onset, strong syncopation too, that's probably of interest to people here. Poor sound quality, okay. Then third idea after all this is that let's switch all this around. Instead of thinking of identifying the difficult examples for building new data set that will help improving the state of the art, let's try to identify easy examples. Those for which we know that beat trackers will produce a good result. Or reformulating it in other words, asking the question of how reliably can current state-of-the-art beat trackers annotate very large collections of music. This is important because if we have beat trackers that we want to use them on, I don't know, millions of songs, and we won't have the ground truth for those. And still, we might be interested in knowing if, or at least having an idea of whether they are working well or not on this million of songs. So that's another experiment we did. We ranked 10,000 songs by difficulty as the mean mutual agreement of beat trackers would tell us, so automatically. And we sampled these songs across different levels of difficulty of MMA, and we asked subjects to rank them with respect to the quality of the output of the best beat tracker we had. Okay, so people would say, well, what we can see pretty clearly here is that for those songs that were considered easy, subject would find that the beat tracker would produce an excellent result, and the contrary on the lower hand. And from this, we set up a threshold of, in this case, 1.5 in this scale, for which above it's okay, below it's not okay. And if we apply this threshold on this 10,000 songs, we find that there is 73% of songs that seem to be tractable, or the beat seems to be tractable with confidence, with the best beat tracker existing. But still, a quarter that are still not good. That's what we see here. And if we look at the type of tags that Last.fm users would put on those songs, we see this kind of difference. I mean, not all the tags, just the genre-related tags. So in more details, for those for which it's okay, we say above this threshold, that's fine. If you pick the best beat tracker available, you can be quite confident that the output is going to be okay. So that's rock, rap, pop, reggae, pop rock, hip-hop, dance. But you would have said that even before I started talking, you would say, yeah, well, okay, rock, pop. Still, that's what's typically encountered in evaluation data sets. Now, more interesting, the one below this threshold, we can find classical jazz. Again, yeah, that was predictable. But progressive metal, death metal, black metal, greencore, and that's sort of a surprise because metal, it's very strongly percussive, not much tempo changes, I mean, we don't really know. The current hypothesis is it's about the noise, which maybe relate to the previous finding I mentioned before, which is that poor sound quality seems to have a profound effect on to affect a lot bit trackers. Yeah.
So I'm looking now at the different categories of music, and I'm trying to compare it back to your 73% are acceptable and 27% are unacceptable. I mean, are those percentages just due to whatever happened to be in that particular data set?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It is actually an easy data set. I think it's from the million song data set. They produce, for those who use it, they produce 1%, which is 10,000. We use just this because, and indeed, yeah, it seems to be a relatively too easy data set. So in a different data set, the proportion would be different, and in a worse way, probably.